Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our entitled people. In today's episode, helping out doesn't mean giving you $100,000. No notice, no dinner. Making my sick kid wait for pain meds. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Helping out doesn't mean giving you $100,000. Disclaimer: all names below have been changed. This story occurs on my wife's side of the family, so I have a second row seat rather than a front row for most of this. My wife's Aunt Louise is a great lady. She and her husband lived in the SF Bay Area and bought their home in the late 1970s. After her husband passed a few years ago, she sold her home for over $1 million and moved back to live closer to her family where she grew up, farming areas in southern CA. She's in her late 60s. Aunt Louise had 3 children, who are now all in their 40s. The 2 oldest are nice, normal people. Her youngest, Kay, is a real piece of work. She meets all the criteria for a psychological diagnosis of narcissism. This is just one of literally dozens of stories I could tell. First, some backstory about Kay's husband Pedro. He was a good provider. About 10 years ago, things began going well and began making pretty good money. To Kay, however, higher income meant more spending, and soon she was buying a new car every 2 years. They went on cruises. She had all the latest and greatest gadgets. As the old MTV tagline used to go, too much is never enough. To augment her lifestyle, she would routinely run to her mom, Aunt Louise, with a sob story or another. We don't know the true figure, but I've heard rumors that Aunt Louise has given her more than $20,000 over the past few years. Kay and Pedro managed to keep their heads above water, but when COVID hit and the state of California ordered economic shutdown, money became tight. Then in October, the company went out of business. He found another job, but was essentially starting his career over. Naturally, they'd begun fighting about money, and 2 weeks ago it comes to a head. After hearing the blasphemous word, "no," one time too many, Kay announces she's getting a divorce. Being California, she naturally expected the courts were going to give her one last payday from this poor guy. Her car, their house, his 401k, and generous alimony. However, in her greed, she forgot that Pedro had kept draining his 401k to pay off credit cards. And all those papers about the house she was signing every couple of years was to refinance their house to pay off more credit cards. So there's almost no equity. And with having to start his career over, alimony wasn't going to be that great. So Kay does what she always does, goes running to her mother, Aunt Louise. Aunt Louise is naturally sympathetic and urges Kay to try and reconcile, but failing that, she might be able to help her out. Literally 2 hours later, Kay texts Aunt Louise with a photo of a pricey condo and asks for $100,000 to cover her down payment and costs to furnish it. Aunt Louise naturally pushes back, telling Kay that helping out didn't mean $100,000. She had meant letting Kay live with her while she got back on her feet, writing a check for security deposit and first month's rent, and maybe helping with some car payments. At this point, Kay totally flips out. Here are the things my wife said were direct quotes. "I'm getting these third hand, so they might be slightly off. I can't believe my own mother would be so selfish. What difference does $100,000 make? You're not going to spend it all anyway," meaning before Aunt Louise dies. Just sell some stocks or something. Aunt Louise fortunately does have someone who manages her money, but she stays on a strict allowance. After Aunt Louise held out, Kay has begun polluting Facebook with passive-aggressive messages about finding out people's true colors. My wife is actually hoping she calls to ask for help, specifically so she can let her have it with both barrels. Sounds like it's time for the ungrateful to learn a lesson. Generosity only goes so far, and by throwing a temper tantrum, she's only gonna push people away. Then when she actually needs help, either no one will be around or be willing. Karen version of the boy who cried wolf. This is what happens when someone never learns any self-control, accountability, or the word no enough. What an entitled brat. Reminds me of a president we once had. I bet you can't wait to watch her crash and burn. Yes and no. On one hand, who doesn't want to see a little comeuppance delivered? On the other hand, Kay seems like the kind who will keep making people around her miserable if she doesn't get what she wants. Kay is a real piece of work. My guess is she'll either look for a sugar daddy, try to run back to her ex, whom I hope wants nothing to do with her, or try to mooch off the family for the rest of her days, or maybe even try working for an ill. I'd compile a list of all the crap she's done and how she isn't deserving of any of the handouts she's insisting she should get. Narcissists hate being publicly called out. Since they are all about image, one of two things could happen. One is that she'll redact a few things and pretend to be the angel so she could believe everyone would feel sorry for her. Another is she'll go full on public tantrum. And not gonna lie, I hope for the tantrum because it can be recorded for evidence if she ever tries to sue. Either way, I'd be ready to give her both barrels over the phone just like your wife. What a horror of a woman. No notice, no dinner. This happened when I was a kid. We lived several hours away from the rest of the family, except for an aunt about half an hour away. Some relatives were coming up to our area and staying with my aunt. I think their visit was a week or two. The plan was to come have dinner with us one of the nights. My mother asked my aunt to pick a day so she could plan dinner. I think this was probably 8 extra people. Nobody ever communicated which day. Ding dong. They showed up unexpectedly just before Mom would have started cooking for us. She did not start dinner, said nothing about it, and after a couple of hours they all left. I remember whining about being hungry and her shushing me. As an adult, I understand why she did it. We did not have enough food because we didn't know what day they were coming, and we were much too poor to order in. It's just mind-boggling that they'd all decide on a day without telling us. I'm in a much different income bracket now. Most people are astonished when I tell them we never ate in a restaurant, bought a pizza, etc. Yet I would still say we weren't truly poor. We were just over the poverty line. Others were worse off. Volontiers. Laughs, my sister did that to me when I was just out of college. Her and her 4 kids. I offered all they could eat ramen or macaroni and cheese. LOL. She complained to my aunt that I wouldn't feed them. The entitlement of some people blows my mind. You did what you had to do for your family. Nothing wrong with a warm bowl of KD. Yum. I grew up poor in a poor part of Canada. We wouldn't have dreamed of inviting ourselves for supper when I was a kid, and it's still considered a major social breach to do so today. It just isn't done because we recognize most folks flat out can't afford unexpected guests at an already tight dinner table. After my dad died suddenly, we were poor. I always swore that as an adult, I would never eat hamburger helper again, and I haven't. That was just bad manners on their part. They should never have assumed that they'd be welcomed, notice or not. I applaud your mom's response. Something like this happened to me. I used to be married, and I had 2 little girls. Still have the little girls, but I'm not married anymore. One day this guy I worked with at a grocery store showed up with his wife and his 3 little boys. No notice. I had made pizza for dinner, but that's all we had. There was not enough for all of us. So we sat on our porch and visited with them for about an hour, and they finally left, making my sick kid wait for pain meds. Dear super entitled young woman ahead of me at the pharmacy with the stupid blonde pigtails. I sincerely hope you never have a child who is at home in pain and crying because when you went to the pharmacy earlier they gave you the wrong meds, and when you go back an entitled young woman ahead of you steps away from her transaction to chat on the phone for several minutes about a friend's antics. I asked you nicely to finish because I had a kid in pain at home. The nastiness you came back at me with was unanticipated, and it made me cry all the way home. So thanks for that. Oh, and your hair looks ridiculous. Why couldn't the person behind the register tell her to step aside so that she could ring you up? It's a shame that you had to be put in that position. I wish, but I think that the staff is instructed not to engage these days. As a retail person, if she steps out of line to take a phone call, I'm canceling her transaction and proceeding with the next one. She can get back in line and chat as long as she wants. And that's how it should happen. Thank you. Hey, can you cancel her transaction since she stepped away so the rest of us can get out of here? If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you in the next video.